If you dig role playing games, as well as books such as Neuromancer and Mirrorshades, and movies like Blade Runner and Johnny Mnemonic, and streaming series like Altered Carbon and Cyberpunk Edge Runners, then Neon Rain for the Cypher System could be right up your rain soaked hologram advertisement illuminated alley. And I'll share my review right after this. Happy holidays, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I dive into today's review, I do want to mention if you enjoy the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as DriveThruRPG, and to do so, simply visit thegaminggang.com, click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. And of course, you can make a one-time donation by way of PayPal or become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links in the show notes. Also, down in those show notes, you'll find an invite link to our Discord server. It's absolutely free to sign up, so be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. The Gaming Gang 12 Days of Reviews continues as I'll be sharing my thoughts on Neon Rain for the Cypher System from Monte Cook Games. This 224-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $49.99. If you want to grab the PDF, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $18.99. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Neon Rain. A few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Monte Cook Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a really good feel of what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, Neon Rain contains both player-facing and GM-facing content. So if you're a player and your game master has picked up Neon Rain, maybe just hasn't started running anything from it yet, maybe they're talking about picking this up, keep in mind there is GM information that conflicts directly with player information. That is intentional. And there are a couple of adventures contained in this volume. So it is possible you might see some spoilers as we flip on through. I am going to stay essentially spoiler free, but just so you know, you might see some things which might ruin some of the surprises. Anyway, I should also mention if your game master is thinking about picking up Neon Rain, let them know about this review. That way they can approach this and make a far more informed buying decision. All right, first thing we're going to do is take a look at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life. So let's give credit where credit is due. Of course, Neon Rain is a cyberpunk supplement for the Cypher System. This is not a standalone book. Now, there have been recent releases from Monte Cook Games which were completely standalone, such as the Old Gods of Appalachia. That is not the case here. You do have to have the Cypher System core rulebook in order to utilize Neon Rain. Of course, this is a cyberpunk setting book, so we are going to start off with some information for the players about, well, what is cyberpunk? What are some of the key tenets of a cyberpunk setting? And then, of course, we will start getting into more specific information regarding the player characters. So we will get some info about the major megacorps, as well as character backgrounds, and then we will get into our types. So in the Cypher system, we have 4 core types in the core rulebook. Now in Neon Rain, those have been tweaked. So of course, we do have our different types here. So we've got the solo, we have got the broker, we have got the hotshot, we also have the tech. And you will find their starting stat pools. And of course, you'll have the might, speed, and intellect, as well as each player will have 6 additional points that they can put however they want into those stat pools. And of course, we get the abilities that they can choose for their different tiers. So as they advance, they will go up in tier. And then we have some new things become available to them. Now, some of these things are going to be directly from the core rulebook. Other aspects, other abilities will be brand new for Neon Rain. So keep that in mind. Then we're going to get into our descriptors. And there are 5 new descriptors. My favorite happens to be the engram or engram. I have heard it pronounced as well. So what these are, people who thought they were human beings, and then it turns out they're constructed AIs who are hosted in a biological body. Pretty cool. We also have the Luddite, who is someone who has no cybernetic enhancements whatsoever. So, of course, in a cyberpunk setting, they are kind of few and far between, so fairly rare. We also get into our foci. So some of the foci is going to be from the core rulebook, but modified for Neon Rain, such as fuses, flesh, and steel. In the core rulebook, that's fairly rare. So the player character would have to worry about upkeep for the cyberware, as well as repairing the cyberware from wear and tear and things like that. Well, in Neon Rain, it is something that is far, far more common. So, of course, the player doesn't have to worry about their character dealing with repairs and upkeep and so forth. And then, of course, we'll get into new foci as well, such as hacks the network, has a custom drone, knows everything. And of course, as the player characters advance in tiers, they will get some new options here as well. Next, we'll jump on into equipment. And one of the big changes with Neon Rain compared to the Cypher System core book is the fact that we have dollars. So in Cypher System, with most of the supplements that are out there, money is really abstract. Not in Neon Rain, because, of course, the consumerism plays an important role in a cyberpunk setting. So, of course, we also have the billions of have-nots and the very few haves. So, of course, we have to concern ourselves with money. And with your player characters, they're going to be going on different missions, of course. So they get paid out in cash. And then, of course, they've got that cash available to them in order to buy more equipment or upgrade their supplements or get new cyberware and so forth. So quite a lot of that in here. We also have to worry about drugs. Drugs play an important role in a cyberpunk setting. Now, something that I really like about Neon Rain is in the Game Master facing info, we have a discussion of what are some of the tenets of cyberpunk. What are some of the things you really want to do your best to include so it feels like cyberpunk? But there's also a discussion of things that people may not want to deal with at the game table. And the fact that a vast majority of the populace in a cyberpunk setting are drugged up so they can deal with it might not be necessarily something that everybody wants at their table. So I thought that was pretty cool. Next, we'll get into our cyberware. So we've got loads and loads of various different pieces of equipment that the player characters can replace their functional, normal body parts with. And then, of course, we also have a lot of vehicles and such. We will also have a lot of equipment that's got name brands and things like that, because, of course, We do have that whole consumerism, capitalism tenet of a cyberpunk game. So, about the first third of the book is going to be devoted to both players and game masters. The rest of the book is going to be essentially game master eyes only. And then building your cyberpunk setting is one of my favorite aspects of this. As I pointed out already, we'll get a lot of information about various different themes, concepts that you might want to keep in mind. We've got some various different random tables. We have some optional rules if you wanted to include some other things into your cyberpunk setting, such as fantasy or supernatural or time travel. So it's showing the game master that there are a lot of different ways that you can incorporate other genres into your cyberpunk setting, such as something along the lines like a Shadowrun. All right, then we'll get into a bunch of optional rules. I gotta say, I have not seen all of the various different books out there as far as the genre books for the Cypher system. I have seen a few, and I gotta say, just off the top of my head, I think this has more optional rules than any of the books I've seen before. And I thought that was very, very cool. So, I mean, we've got optional rules about crime and planned obsolescence. We have the shits, which is if somebody has so much cybernetics in their body that it starts conflicting with their brain or with the rest of their body, then they have to worry about that. And there's, of course, information how a GM can use that as an intrusion. We've got some optional rules about player intrusions as well. We will get into a bit of depth about drug use, drug prices, different types of recreational drugs, because once again, recreational drug use is a big tenet of cyberpunk. So keep that in mind. We'll get into some GM advice. We will get some information about the kind of default setting for Neon Rain, which is Edge City, which is pretty traditional stuff here as far as cyberpunk goes. We do have a cool bestiary. It's creatures and NPCs, but the reality is it's NPCs for the most part. And then, of course, we will have a couple of adventures, which are really solid adventures to get your players started in Edge City or whatever locale you want to make your home for Neon Rain. As far as the production quality, top notch. It's what we expect from Monte Cook Games. Paper stock, nice and heavy. This has got a stitched binding, so this is going to hold up to repeated use. Artwork throughout, really nicely done. And I also love how we've got these different advertisements sprinkled throughout. Once again, that is a tenet of cyberpunk, as well as cyberpunk role-playing games, too. All right, that is a peek inside Neon Rain for the Cypher system from Monte Cook Games. Once again, this is available now. The 224-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $49.99. If you want, you can score the PDF over at DriveThruRPG for $18.99. All right, let's swing back over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. I got to say, I'm very impressed by the sheer amount of content that's packed inside 224 pages for Neon Rain. If you're a fan of the Cypher system and you're looking for a cyberpunk role-playing game, this is a no-brainer. This you're going to step right on into. Now, of course, if you are not necessarily a fan of the Cypher system, Neon Rain's probably not going to change your mind about anything there either. Now, there are a lot of artifacts, there are a lot of ciphers that are included in the book, but I have to say that it's not really the main focus of Neon Rain. It is all the other cyberware and various different optional rules and so forth, as well as advice for the game master, which really comes to the fore of Neon Rain. Gotta say, I'm impressed by the optional rules and some not so optional, which will change how the Cypher system plays, at least mechanically. I think the biggest change here really is the money that normally in most of the genre books for the Cypher system that I'm aware of, money is very abstracted. You're not sitting there tracking every single dollar. Here, because of capitalism and consumerism being such major tenets of cyberpunk, you are going to be tracking your funds. And of course, you're playing cyberpunk characters who are no doubt normally going to be a team going on various different missions that they get paid for. So you have the cash involved with that as well. So all in all, really nicely done. I will point out what is probably going to be the elephant in the room. Most people are going to be curious, how does Neon Rain stack up with Cyberpunk Red or Cyberpunk 2020, both from DriveThruRPG Games? And you may already know I've reviewed Cyberpunk Red and thought it was great. Didn't think it was laid out as intuitively as it could have been, but all in all, I think it's an excellent role-playing game. So a lot of people look at Cyberpunk Red as the really gold standard in cyberpunk role-playing games. So how does Neon Rain stack up? Well, I have to say quite well, honestly. Once again, if you are not a fan of the Cypher system mechanics, then Neon Rain's probably not going to be on your radar. But if you do like Cypher system and you are interested in cyberpunk, this is an excellent book. It really is. Personally, in my opinion, if I were going to be running a cyberpunk role-playing game, I would actually incorporate some things from Cyberpunk Red as far as its setting, like with Night City and some of the various different aspects of that people are so familiar with now. Because the reality is, DriveThruRPG Cyberpunk is in the cyberpunk zeitgeist, because that's what the video game Cyberpunk 2077 is built off of. That's also where the core DNA of Cyberpunk Edge Runners comes from. So being a fan of that and being a fan of Cypher System, you might want to pick up Neon Rain and sprinkle in a little of the Cyberpunk Red out there. At least that would be my approach as far as running a cyberpunk setting for Cypher System. But the book as a whole, I really like. I do solidly recommend it. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Neon Rain an 8 out of 10. Once again, if you are a fan of Cypher System looking for cyberpunk, this is a must-own. It really is. If you are not a fan of the Cypher System, then this probably wouldn't be on your radar in the first place. All right, that is it for this time out. If you liked the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. I will mention I am on a bit of a holiday break, so I will not return with a new live stream until January 6th. All right, so everybody, the 12 days of reviews is going to continue on the Gaming Gang, so stay tuned for that. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.